We'll just really in a relaxed way do our recitation. So 7 o'clock has arrived.
Sona yende gyozo je deshin sheba jajo nabe deja rewa yu gewe nyezo lejo chidu dendon juju go jiyu juga jajo jone jove layam de daba dala rabu shinye damba yende de gendu layam jajo Deva Jaya Mejaji Deva Kunzun Dova Rangi Sene Yonsun Tene Sangye Tenbayi Karma Ravi Mamela Yuma Sepa Churka Milan Logan Tendagu Duji Chenan Dedada Sonam Diye Kamje Sivayi Oban Dome Genge Radin Gadan Nadan Shive Lapchukde Sibe Zole Loan
In English, page 3. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, the fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When the supreme among humans you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise then I prostrate. With pure bodies formed supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the vast Lord, to you I prostrate. With supreme signs, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate, 3 worlds are not, incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtue which frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to that dharma which pacifies I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions, subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. With these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all-seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by waves of aging, sickness, and death. The Heart Sutra, page 4 in Tibetan. Onju shirage paru du jimbo samu jeba nila namba tajin kumbo ngabo deda tajin ye domba namba tabo tene sanje ji tu sedan tembo shari anju semba jimbo paba jene ze onju lanti gejeme rije go kanala shirage paru du jimbo samu jimbo deba de chedara labo ja Ege merwa janju semba jimbo papa jene ze wanju ki sedan demba shari da de ege mezo shari bo rije bo kana shira di paru samo chebo deba de ta namba tawa jade kumbo ngabo de ta rajin
je domba namba yanda ba je su da wu su domba wu domba ni su 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 de domba ni shem domba ni le jang su je ma yin nu de jen lu sorwa na du she da du she namba she ba na domba wu che ri bu de ga na che da domba ni se ni me ba ma je ba ma ga ba te ma me ba te ma da te wa te wa ka ma me ba wu che ri bu de ga na su me so me di shi na ma le she ba me mi me na wa me na me che me yu me yi me su me cha me le cha me chu me do mi ji ka me ba ne yi je na ma le she be ka je wa do ya me do ma re pa se ba ka shi me ka shi se be ma do ya me do de je ro du ne wa da kun ju o wa da la me yi je me to wa me ma do wa ya me do she re bu de na a ju se ba na to wa me be che che la je ba ro du che ba wa te ji ne de se na de ba me ta ba me de chin je ro le shin do de ne me le de be da chin do du sun do na ba san je dam je ja she la je ba ro du chen ba la te ne la na me ba ya da ba so be Mumba zoba san je zo te da wa na she ra je ba ro du chen be na le ba chen bo ma wa na me be na mi nya ma da nya be na dong e dan je ra du she wa ra je be mi ze ba na de ba she ba cha de she ra je ba ro du chen be ma me ba te ya ta ka de para sangha de buddhi so wa shari mu chandu sambo sambo eda shiro je paru du chambo sambo la la pa chawu tenne chumde de tenge de de shende chandu sambo chambo baba jere de onju la lesu shi jawa jene lesu piji buddhi de shino de shira juji tenpa shindu shira je paru du chambo sambo la che paru chade de shin shenpa namja jesu gira Chonde dege dege jega zene zene demba jene dade bola jonju zemba zemba baba chere zemba ju tam jega dembe polo de da ha ama ye da tsa chebe de yira chonde dege tumbo mumba de
Page 11, English. Thus I have heard once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha on Vulture Peak, together with a great assembly of monks and bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was totally absorbed in the concentration that examines all phenomena with profound illumination, and at the same time, the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, was engaged in the profound practice of the wisdom Gambhya, analyzing the five aggregates by nature empty. Then, through the inspiration of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra spoke to the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, how should those of good family learn who wish to follow the profound practice of the wisdom Gambhya? Thus he spoke in the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva replied to the Venerable Shariputra, saying, O Shariputra, whatever son or daughter of good family wishes to follow the profound practice of the wisdom Gambhya should look at it like this, analyzing the five aggregates by nature empty. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is no other than form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, karmic formations, and consciousness are all empty. Therefore, Shariputra, all phenomena are empty without characteristics. They are unborn and unceasing. They are neither impure nor free from impurity. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no karmic formations, no consciousness. There is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. There are no spheres of the eyes up to no spheres of the mind. There are none of these all the way up to the sphere of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance, nor is there destruction of ignorance. There are none of these all the way up to, there is no old age and death, nor is there destruction of old age and death. Thus there is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cessation of suffering, and no path. There is no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, because there is no attainment, all bodhisattvas hold to the wisdom gone beyond. And because there is no obscurity of mind, they have no fear. Passing utterly beyond falsity, they reach beyond the bounds of sorrow. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times, by relying on the wisdom gone beyond, fully and clearly awaken to unsurpassed, most perfect and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the wisdom gone beyond, the mantra of great insight, an unsurpassed mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering, should be known as the truth, for there is no deception. The mantra of the wisdom gone beyond is proclaimed, Tayata, Prate, Gate, Parapate, Parasamgate, Bodhisattva. O Shariputra, this is how a Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, should learn the profound wisdom gone beyond. Then the Blessed One arose from that concentration and praised the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, very good, O son of good family. It is exactly like that. The profound wisdom gone beyond should be practiced exactly as you have said, and then the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Shariputra, the noble Avalokiteshvara, that whole gathering in the world with its gods, men, and Tathagatas, spirits, their hearts full of joy, praised the words of the Blessed One. So ends the noble discourse on the essence of the wisdom gone beyond. So today, really, if we had sent out made an announcement last week that today His Holiness the Dalai Lama would be teaching, then we would be able to listen to that because that's going on right now, and there's some students who are listening to His Holiness the Dalai Lama's teaching now, and they're very fortunate to be able to do so. But we too, because we will be turning our attention to the way of the Bodhisattva and to the generation of Bodhicitta, are also fortunate. And so when we examine bodhicitta and begin to train in bodhicitta and study bodhicitta as best as we are able, as that is the most vital of practices, then whatever the activity we engage with, whatever the way in which we benefit others, whatever Dharma practice we are engaged in, it will be a wave of blessings and good fortune. In the past weeks, we began the very beginning of the text with the homage paid by the translator, in which the Trajatna, the triple gem, is venerated, and this was followed by an adjustment of our intention, the setting of our mental attitude. And whether it is from the standpoint of the author composing the Shastra, a teacher instructing in the Shastra, or a listener listening to it, whatever the case may be, the individual must essentially commit themselves to the generation of bodhicitta. And we consider the basis for generating bodhicitta two bases. They are the precious human physical embodiment, and then also the mental basis. So there is a physical basis, physical embodiment, and a mental basis as well. Each of this Shastra's 10 chapters has its own respective topic, and we have begun the first chapter, the topic of which is the benefits of bodhicitta. When we consider the benefits of bodhicitta and are in earnest and able to practice as we learn, consideration of bodhicitta develops in us an enthusiasm for bodhicitta. And whatever the contemplation focused upon bodhicitta, listening, contemplation of bodhicitta, it is followed by an enthusiasm for it. And with that enthusiasm comes an ease of practice as well as an immediacy of result. Last week, we finished with the beginning of verse 6. Virtue thus is weak, meaning that on our continuum, we have a preponderance of negativities, and the virtues we have accumulated are comparatively weak. So an explanation of these early verses has already been provided. And now it is the case that we all alike deserve, rather wish for happiness and satisfactions, and we wish to avoid dissatisfaction. As it is, however, we have accumulated only very few causes for satisfaction, and they are ineffective and wanting compared to the many causes we have already accumulated for future dissatisfaction. So that leaves for us one process, which is to ensure that we don't continue to experience aging, sickness, and death and then an intensification of those sufferings when we fall into lower realms and experience them. We must accumulate the causes for satisfaction and contentment, and eliminate the causes for those dissatisfactions and discontents. So that means we need to accumulate virtues and eliminate our negative activities.
뭐야, 나한테 가르쳐 자주심이 변시고요. 변시받으라 sabje 숨세와 자주심이 변시받으라 sabje 숨세 가르치는 당부디 디과타다 점심 개와타다 금뉴바스 당부디도 왔네요. 디과타다 점심 개와타다 금뉴바스 아니 민다 되 개발진 토바스 네. 민다 되 개발진 토바스 아니 배배거는 셰바스 어디서 lưu 당부 살리버리나 되는 셰오나
When contemplating the benefits of bodhicitta, the section in the text concerned with this has three further subsections, and they are how to thoroughly eliminate all negativities and the power present, or the potential present for achieving virtues. The second is the name and the meaning that is exceptional, that will be achieved thereby. And then third, through examples, an explanation of the benefits of bodhicitta. These are the three subsections within this section, a greater explanation of the benefits of bodhicitta.
어떻게다 담보 sabje 담보 디바타다 점지 개와타다 루바 제드바다라 sabje 숨제 가르치는 sabje 숨이어다다 숨이어라 아니 디바치 뭐 탐지 좀 봐스 디바탐지 좀 봐서 sabje 직세 대화초 루바스 sabje 니제 아니 지달되게 된 루바스 어 sabje 숨나면 고란다 sabje 담보들은 나서게 sabje 숨이어가 직도 시켜라.
The first subsection is how it is that great negativities are overcome. The second is the way or the potential for achieving great satisfaction. The third is how it is that one's desires are brought about. The first of these subsections has three further subsections.
아니 계신 관계 생기 넘버 요로로 서와다 준주고 측들에서 한다 준주 아마
So the root verse for this first subsection is found in verse 6 on page 32 and in this text. Evil is of great and overwhelming strength, except for perfect bodhicitta. What other virtue is there that can lay it low?
야, 디기다 대야 지금 sabje 담보디 디바탐지 디바 친구 좀 봤어. 다 디바 친구 좀 봤어. 나 만나서 다 담보 제시도 때 쉬바이나. 디바 친구 때 만나서 간다 공을 지금마디게 대다 저원님 중이라 따세데 따나저기 그냥 저기 제조기 디바디 아니 간데시 열었으나 하장 톱 친구 열었어. 톱 친구 간데시 열었나 아니 뒤지고네 하장 톱 친구 직세로 뒤지고네 직세 꿀릉고네 니세 야 꿀릉고네 톱 친구 싫어요. 저거는 저 차고 두개로 야 아니 저 집에서 삼바 좋아지 아니 뒤지 아니 나 신이고네 톱 친구 싫어요. 그래서 신기스도 디보사기 있다 신 여러 선들들 디보사 유들라 산제들 사다 선들들 사니여서 신기도 이거 사 어디고 시고는 사도 잡아 아니 또 친구 쉬우지 사요. 그래서
Evil is of great and overwhelming strength. And this follows the line, virtue thus is weak, and always evil is of great and overwhelming strength. Now, virtue thus is weak, and always. This always, the word indicates the time period. And time period is one of the elements that characterizes the strength or potential or influence, powerful influence of an action. In this case here, it says the non-virtue or evil is of great and overwhelming strength. And there are 4 elements to this great and overwhelming strength. And one is time. The time period gives it its strength. So too does the intention underlying the action, a non-virtuous action. The intention contributes to its overwhelming strength. So does the application or the actual execution of the action. That contributes to its overwhelming strength. And also contributing to the overwhelming strength is the object or the basis or the field in which the action takes place. And there are 2 possible ones. There are 2 possible objects. They are sentient beings and Buddhas.
다 담보가서 그 300원에 아니 이것도 채웠던 개것도 중에 예당비 가서 계산 시간 쉬자다. 가서 배나 미 계제 배다 밀어 샘지지 내지기 유바이나 자 아니 혹시 시행을 통중지기 유바이나 자 계제식이 유바이나 가는 아주 좋아. 구름 담보 삼로 땅들에 삼로 땅도 삼로 구름도 빼주신 거지. 아니 무시 지류 잠바에 숙친 보시는가 그러와. 아니 제가 제사를 나가 가르치나 봐게 지금 제일 있었는데 이거 저도 수술을 고백도지 아니 숙친 보시고 열에서 지금 빼나 가르치나 빼나 가지고 미지 수술 미지 깨지 미션다지 수술을 깨지 아니 지금 많이 맞지 라고 여봐이나 아니 수술 고도 미 계란을 찍으려고 두다가나 아니 남사 삼로디나 수술 삼배나 수일라고도 남녀 수를 가둘라서 어때 두제 시골에 나를 가까이 와서 그 삼바다 좋아서 숙친구도 와 되게 꿀 아니 깨지 시야지로 이마이나 되게 여러 왔어 아니 나지 시행을 줘야다 공부 왕게 되고 거기 지나면서 이것도 빼 꿀 삼바 숙친구시는 저기 여자 아니 이것도 또 친구시라요 개와도 꿀 숙친지만도 여마로 매주 아니 되게 라시는 이것도 개와도 또 충을 차도 여래서
Now, last week we explained the way in which the intention preceding the virtuous action or the non-virtuous action determines the strength of that action, and I illustrated how this plays out with an example of a person humiliating another or harming another. And when that happens, the person who's deliberately harming another or going to humiliate another will carefully plan it and then invest themselves in the execution of that meanness, and then afterwards check to make certain that they have done just as they intended. And so one is very invested in that action. And just think of the experience you have when you hear someone says, "Oh, someone did this to me. Someone really spoke down to me." Then you'll curiously follow up with some inquiry into who was it, what did they say, when did they say it, and when negativity is the topic, we become very invested. And for that reason, the whatever the negative action, whether it be anger or another form, it will be invested with the intention and then full application. And for that reason, the negativity becomes quite significant, whereas virtuous action doesn't have that same intensity.
뭐야, 나도 그런 거 삼보고는 그래서 난 이번 뒤지고네. 뒤지고는 디고 사야가 뒤지디 하장으로 가도 있는 디고 사야 뒤지 디고 사야가 디고 사야 말서 뒤지 이제 연말 디고 가도 있는 사야가 그미 뭐그 가도 있는 다 여러 와서 개와 사야가 뒤지디 하는 아주 가르쳐서 상계비 지금도 맞춘 바이나 상계 지금도 최소한 상계기 최대한 저 최라면 아주 최지도서 많이 그냥 개와체지 뒤뒤 중고로 와 디고 사야가 뒤지 상계 지금도 최마저 깨져 개가 가도는 사기로 왔어 제가 뒤지 사도 봐 제가 디고 사야가 뒤지 하장을 rungu 망보 개와 사야가 뒤지 하장 특히 여러서
So with that, then, that's a description of the intention and the application. Now, regarding time, non-virtues, unconstructive action can occur at any time. There's really no limit. There's no limit. There's no set time for counterproductive or negative actions. Whereas our virtuous actions, our constructive actions, are constrained in a way by whether or not we've been exposed to the teachings of the Buddha, whether or not the Buddha has visited, whether or not the Buddha was present and left teachings, and we have been exposed to them. Without that, without the teachings of the Buddha, it's just a free range for non-virtue.
세상 뒤에 텔레단을 딱 상인은 영어로 마음치도서 많이 개바 어저기 개바직 개전 장면직 개바 장면직 개전직 개바직 세저로 아니 뒤에로 삼로 땅에 있나 아니 만족이 단다 수수 먼저 미 만족이 세 튼들 개지 말에 세저로 와 뒤에 대시디 아니 먼저 뒤에 거는 대시 야고랬어 그다음 먼저 셈이 개전 망체직 교육이잖아. 그래서 시도 뒤즈고 게 시하고 왔어. 재산 뒤즈디 아니 배가지고 메시지 끼지마들 배가지고 메시지 뒤니시로 끼지마 찍으래 세야기. 그래서 디 아니 뒤즈를 따네. 자고 지내러 와. 뒤즈 배달 로사야 제와 동기 민주 망고여로 와. 대대단단 하나도 뒤즈디를 고쳐 잡아 있나? 까만 찍을 쳐서 영화에서 거라 끼지마스. 기지마세다 직지 결바세다 직지 이런 것도 시제도 준준나라 연구를 항상 남을지도 연구와 아니 이제 주제지가 그냥 수도 시제나 고대로 차를 그냥 제일 시제가 예소.
Now, later, when we are studying the greatest stages of the path, we will have time. We will take a moment to reflect on the explanation of time, its consequence, its relationship to the mind, and there is terminology that describes time as it is in its relation to the mind. We speak of instance as being instantaneous or fleeting or momentary, and those describe short intervals. And then we have descriptions of long periods of time, millions and billions of years and eons. Compared to millions and billions of eons, a lifetime is a mere moment. Now, later in the great treatise on the great stages of the path, we will be able to set aside some time for instruction in some of the specifics of what is meant by time and duration. And so I will make it a point to do that.
뭐야? 좀 되게 담고 최선도 메다바송으로 메다바송은 동해선 기지마송으로 제가 기지마송도 디디 야알라다 출루 망고 열와 아니 출루 신바도 좀 되더라는 몰로치 보다 또 탐만도 semba tanga me ko kala kiji mas ko la ngana sam tanga ro ma khesa ye dani ye moma ne ye ma be sani ye re de sam tuju sam tanga ngana to sam na be khesa ba ma khesa ne de ye sani ye ma lo moma ne ye khang ba de sam moma ne du 아주 lumba 신나도 뭐만도 lumba 뭐만도 다다 두선 아주 선만한 때 친구여 왔어. 가르치는 아주 기징만 도나도 아주 야고 선만 삼삼 두고요 말아. 마도 이제 아니 뭐 미다고 도나는 마신데 아니 건조 좀 되더라. 좀 되더라. 배 거고 취老과 땡도 되게 몰로지야 근데 중요하다. 기징만 생기디 배 섬로 봐 14분 맞으나 기징만 생기디 섬로 배 차가고 요래서
Now, when the Buddha Shakyamuni first taught the Buddha Dharma, he emphasized impermanence, and impermanence as an expression or as a description of momentariness. And there were many other philosophical systems in India at the time, and they objected to his emphasis on momentariness. And they could well point out or they thought they could well point out that yesterday I was here, last year I was here, it was me here yesterday, it's me here now, tomorrow it'll be me here. So last year this was here, last year this house was here, this forest in this region was here, it was all here in the past, it is here presently. And so the concept of momentariness was lost to them, and they rejected or they objected to the Buddha's view and his teaching on momentariness.
디네 다만 고사지로 다리네 개고 개지고 되네 시도도 하잖아 두스투주 동안 배추는 기지기지게 네트워크하고 브러셔고 개반에 있는데 딱 간다고 쉬워 줘 누구요 뭐 지금 내기요 말세가 내가 저기 선배나나 몇기 땅징기로도 숙청고 여자 아니 그게 요어도 되고 좀 서비요 말해서
From the very moment we are first produced or we are given birth to, the incessant momentariness, that is the continual change of our state, continues unabated until we die. And it isn't the case that the self that we identified yesterday is present today. It is instead that it is constantly changing. And it is a young person who has been recently born and an adult who has lived some years, and then a person becomes aged and then they die. And that is the progression through momentariness, and through momentariness as change, ultimately ending in the imminent death. And it is self-grasping that prevents us from comprehending the momentariness and the continual change that we undergo.
아주 되고만 폼스 담고 싸워 두고도 폼 싸워서 폼이나 담고 벌스게 안디네 계란을 로가 주시는데 로 주시는데 그것도 보면 술 땡기도 와. 계란 로 충도 되는 여러 치도 되는데 어디서나 미다고 고매하는 빼빼하고 그래서 아주 보면 담고 폼도 어디 이제 아사지 땡기도 와. 계란 벌스게 계란들 로 주제를 니슈제를 섬주제를 땡기도 많이 써서 지금 미다고 위하고 섬로다고 빼pen도 치고 좀
we are sort of obligated to fill out paperwork and provide passport photos of ourselves periodically. And so when 10 years pass since the last time you had to do that, and you see that paperwork and you see your photograph, and 10 years has passed, you see you're confronted with your aging. And so the way that we continually have to update our licenses and things like that is really beneficial.
그래서 두자를 그래 아니 배주배 세기 두기 배주배 두자를 문 타고 때는 저 타고 지로 아니 심지어는 내가 깨봐 있나야 아니 왜 당고 세야 삼로 따와나시 그 저하지도 좀 세 소소 맞아 답지 딴 이제 지금 왔어 아니 디나시 비고 가르쳐 있는 저 숙침부 열었어요 저외고는 비고 싫어 또 쳐야 손
So that's time then, in short. And when we look at production later, we will have an occasion to look at this in depth. And so now, as for the application during a negative action, it really is the case that we're very invested. We're wholeheartedly invested when we are wrapped up in some negative action. For instance, anger. When we're heated, we will be hostile and violent. We will say, hey, I'm going to hurt you, or I'm going to kill you, and we will feel very intensely. And then when whatever we do in our anger, we will really see it through, carried away as we are.
도대체 다 저의 거는 덮쳐서 다디는 신지권을 덮쳐이봐 다 신지권을 덮쳐서 그 맞다마도 semjen 내 개발에 밀린 내가 개발이 되고 쳐 밀린 내가 개발에 아니 밖에 도바이 교대에 가서 내가 지는 되고 쳐 텔레 아니 냐란다 산제들 내가 지는 되고 쳐 텔레 다 전주선발 내가 지는 되고 쳐 어들 신지권을 모두 되고 쳐 근데 여러스 아니 semjen 데데요 아니 사 내가 가더니 저 다디로 구조를 되는 디고 사기로 와 이제 다 semjen 되는 디고 사와 있나요 semjen 되는 디고 사도 잡아 아니 랑이 얘기한다 랑이 파마다 아니 디네 랑이 녀다 저 내가 깨봐 있는 디고 쳐야지 아니 디레 semjen 심바심바 내가 깨는 디고 총총한테 여러 와서 제가 수수고 딱 안들 semjen 거는 내가 끼니로 지나 랑이 파마라 파마 세바데 제거이나 아니 semjen 심바 세바데 시다 디고 쳐 데데 여러선이 랑이 기계나 데데 내가 깨와있는 데데 디고 쳐야지 이제 어디에 이르자마 semjen 때문에 디고 치중 열 산지라 때문에 디고 치중 니가 사 열에 손
In that way, then application or the invested, thoroughgoing carrying out of action gives great power to negativities. Now, also contributing to the power of negativities is the basis or the object or the field, the object where against whom the action is committed. And sentient beings may be the object of hostility. Animals may be, human beings may be. And as a human being, the negativity against a human being is of greater consequence than that against another animal. Within or among human beings, actions done to harm individuals with vows, holding vows, is of greater consequence or more significance than those not holding vows. And then the consequence or significance is even greater for Shravakas and Pracheka Buddhas, and greater still for Bodhisattvas and Buddhas. So mainly when we consider the field or the object against whom a negativity is done, we're speaking of the Triratna. But speaking of human individuals, negativity done against a mother or a father is of great consequence. Greater consequence still is harm done to a guru. And it's the case that individuals with whom we are familiar, when we do them harm, that is of greater significance or weight than harm done to those unfamiliar to us. Now, the very worst or very significant is taking the life of one's mother and father. More significant still is taking the life of one's teacher.
어떻게 답변하는 뭐 친구들 자샤가 있는 아주 semjen 부토마다오다 되니까 그 semjen들의 친구들의 세서는 아주 수가 남매다 친구라는 도와서 다리네 키다오다 바주다오다 되는 세서는 양 제바단이 도와서 다리네 미도 세서는 아주 아니 제발 친구 단계도 와. 다리네 롱베기 뽐보자고 다 라마도 내세서 텔레피 제발 쳐. 맨 두자 쇼츠기도 와. 꼭 가서는 밖에 유기 또 치료고 전에 이거 치료 이어가지 친구 전에야 내 사고 두고 해서.
Now just look at the rules, the laws in any country. If someone takes the life of an insect, it's of no consequence at all, and that is legally, or it's of no criminal consequence. If one takes the life of a dog or a cow or something like that, one may be fined. However, if one takes the life of a human being, that one is criminally responsible for that. And then all the more so if one takes the life, one murders a minister or a president or someone like that. Now, just looking at the laws in any country, you can see that the object against whom an action is committed determines its consequence.
어떻게 다들 이거 사도 되는 드나시 개와 사도 주지와 dob체 열에서 dob체 열에 빼나 아주 이 빼도 샤도 정도 빼잖아 샤도 좀 봐. 아니 그다음에 되네요. 티고 친구 나는 럼니 좀 봐이나 티고 친구 나는 럼니 되기 아니 티고 멤버 럼좀 좀 봐요. 뭐 나는 랍되는 뒤지 마고 고려 말와. 그다음 거기를 또버 뒤바라네. 아니 그 티고 친구 나는 럼도 티고 친구가 내들 쇼를 깨고 왔다.天南星 안한서 소놈 사도 좀 봐. 랑이 개인다. 아니 배 파마돼서 소놈 사사가 신차되어서 어디는 인연이 무슨 남백이 취해나가야 파마도 직자침부 제야다. 아니 지 개인다 파마를 자침부 제야돼 가르스나 콜라 랑이 펜도 제가 있는 소놈 채 이해가 인자 아니 자침부 제기가 해서
아니 친 택민기 베디 한계치성.
되게 팀이 티버 침을 넘니요 와. 대중이 팀이 남도 남도 로전시도 좀 팀이 남도 장대기 말와. 티버 침을 넘로도 팀이 또바되게 별로 끼게 하서. 내가 사 개발리도 좀 봐. 아니 얘들 저런가 얘들 남도 토바다 찍어도 그러고 그러는데 방제 찍어 도제 찍어도 그러고 그래서 또바 뒤바다. 어디나 신고 가도 되고 친구들 손은 친구 사기 그 팀이 손은 그냥도 싸셔 와. 어디나 시간 나가서 직접 니버들 나가도 다 치우 나가지 파마다 라마생도 싸지 못 찍고 해야지. 콜라 펜을 채워 있나 손은 채워 사기다. 아니 대전에 더 싸지 못 찍게 하겠어.
Now it is also the case for virtuous actions that the consequence or the significance of the action is determined in part by the object or the field. And for instance, when an individual is training in the Mahayana path, as they train in the Mahayana path, though they aren't focusing their training on the foundation vehicle or the Shravaka yana, they're focusing on the Mahayana. It will happen that incidentally they will accumulate the good qualities that go along with the foundation path or the Shravakayana path. And that is because the Mahayana path is replete with all the good qualities of the Mahayana path and the foundation vehicle path. And so when an individual training in the Mahayana reaches the 8th Bodhisattva Bhumi, at that moment, they also acquire all the realizations and consummate all the abandonments that an arhat does, reaching arhatship. And that is because this is the efficacy of the Mahayana path. There's a similar efficacy and potential in the basis that is our mother, our father, and our guru. When one does for them certain things, the benefits that come from it will be very great as a result of their consequence.
어떻게 빼도 주변에 그런 거죠. 지난 먼저 then the such a village, that is one you make us in a me. Chichi, Pumchi, Gazena, the gate, Kanzukala, Jimbatan Jojoa, Dig Sonum Jeroa, Dig Sonum Tidan, Tirin Suzuga, Suzu Pamada, and a Kala Chik Table, Sonum Yibudi, Nivachum Yamayores. Also, Kazina put Pamadi, who call a new genetic, which had Sonum Sana, who sing it to the Sonum Cherry, and he did a Sonum Yamaro, Togures, and did 수수기 기계다 아니 지금 라마들이나 표현이 대변 하바로 왔어. 되게 표현이 여러서 제단도 채나 파마 지구 지구에 인생도 되게 자기 여러서
Think for a moment about the population of Richmond, say maybe it's 10,000, maybe it's 100,000, whatever it is. If we were to give alms out to all 100,000 and compare the merit accumulated by doing that with the merit of giving one single meal to our parents, the merit would be equal. And why is that? It's because of the potential, the great potential had in the very field of the parent action, virtuous action done for parent or for a teacher is of great consequence because of the very weight and gravity of that field, that object of activity. And so for that reason, in the Buddha Dharma, veneration of one's parents is extremely important.
아니 개와도 또 친주 유리잠바 아니 가르치게 됐으나 아니 디보다 개와니 딱 갑자자고 갑자자도 디보다 또 채워지 고토 돌아 아니 개와도 또 친주니 쇼도 먼저 가르치게 됐으나 아니 말아도 정체물 아사레스 아니 이거 되게 가르치면서 디보디 녀송을 깨워지 콜을 깨워지 그래 녀송을 깨워지 그러 아니 녀송을 깨는 동네 조야는 다다나 나야 차야 조야 이러면 어디지 연구를 와 제가 근데 이제 좀 만족이 있다. 되게 디고디다 개원이 또 그래도 땅이나 연비를 쉬어야 개원 쉬어야 돼. 디고 도에만 다 말해서
Now, the negativities we have accumulated are very powerful. They have great strength. And the virtues we have accumulated are weak by comparison. So what are we to do? If the two were to square off, if our non-virtues were to square off with our virtues, virtue would be certain to lose, and they'd lose by quite a margin. And that would mean that the inevitable fall into the lower realms, another tumble into the samsara, and then with that, another round of agonies and dissatisfactions and sickness and aging and the rest. So when you square off virtue, shoulder to shoulder to non-virtue, and they start to scrap, then actually there's just no question that non-virtue will come out on top.
도저히 딱 만족이 빼도 샤샤는 만족이 비거디 랑진도 저랬으면 다 개어디 부tro마르지만도 연말에서 다 부tro마다 랑진이 중에 탑시 여러 연말에 삼을당 부tro마다 랑진은 그들이 증투고 말아 제가 하나도 개어디 톱이야 뒤지 춘의 연말에 비거디 또 체다신 아니 디베처럼 다 뒤지 온 공배원 강가천 간리천 비거디 또 전부 찾아러 왔어 제가 아주 부tro마다 랑진도 찾아요. 그래서 그들이 비거디 톱이야만 또 개어 톱이야 뒤지시라 각오를 해서
Really, the non-virtues are the elephant, the virtues are the ant, and is there really any hope if there were to be a match between the elephant and the ant? There's no hope at all, right? There's just no chance at all then for us to in the future experience any kind of satisfaction. We are thoroughly conditioned, thoroughly accustomed, thoroughly habituated to the side of non-virtuous activity. And so when the ant faces off with the elephant, there's no question that the elephant triumphs.
뭐야, 다 재단들이 이게 다 이것도 채워 되기 먼저로 가르치기를 개와도 중앙되기 가르치기로서는 다 이것도 또 채워 인도 아니 이것들이 당연하도 가르치기로서는 다 먼저 빼놨다 아무든지 파지네. 다 수수 먼저 가래다 수수 미수다 subsen진 가르치면 다 우유제 상말로 다 대화디 두고요 동행디 매우 소고요 다니까 찍고 찍냐 그 부도마이마다 미마다 랑지 개벌 찍어 요 말했어. 먼저 가가 미유지고 대화 되고요. 능이 되고요 말했어. 제가 네 매번 인들 다 먼저 능이 되고요 말할 때 먼저 그 능이 유 되거든. 참 배침볼랑제나지요. 대화 되고요. 대화가 유진 부도마서 말하면 제가 대화 니 능이 망고 되고도 차대요. 그래서
The situation then is non-virtues have the day. There's a preponderance of non-virtue. Virtue is weak, and and this is the case for all sentient beings, animals, beast and man alike. All that breathe, live and breathe, have this in common, just as they have in common that they all wish for satisfaction, and they all wish to eliminate their discontents and their dissatisfactions. And this is true across the board from the insects all the way up to the elephants. Their purpose, their hope, their intention is the same: to experience satisfaction, gratification, and avoid dissatisfactions. But it is for all sentient beings the case that the causes for dissatisfaction, non-virtue, are more powerful. They're the elephant, and the causes for satisfaction, virtue, is weak, like an ant.
오야, 나 근데 이게 다 맞아. 이니파 세치말로 도고를 세치말로 도 먹으니 다 리니어레스. 다 심지 깨월랑네. 다 아니 밖에 세치말로 도 먹으니 심지니어레스. 지금 아니 되게 다 산지고 뭐도는 아니 거를 깨고 말아. 나디네 그 코를 깨게 유 아니 이 유문방 아니 타바토 팀행 타바토 그러와 그 타바토도 연주 코를 연구 말아 아 본인이 다 코를 깨고 대면지 타마다 연주 깨워 치마치 랭고를 깨워 치마 랭 이마 연주 코를 깨워 말면 뭐 탈사요 말해서 생지 갈리지네 항상
Now, true of all, equally the case for all, is that having taken up a life, having been born, all must take another rebirth in the future. This is true for all sentient beings, with the exception of only two sorts of individuals. The first is the Mahayanist who has attained Buddhahood, and the second is the individual who has abandoned all mental afflictions and therefore does not take rebirth again in cyclic existence. That is an individual in the foundation vehicle, or the Shravakayana, who has abandoned all mental afflictions and will not take rebirth in cyclic existence again. Apart from these two individuals, all others are going to fall again into a future life.
뭐야, 다 코치 저치말랭 그거 인류점마다 저치말 파도가 와. 저치말 파 저랑 저치말 로고. 다 도두점바 다 맞을라 펜토니 맞을라 키에 이거 가리어레스나. 내 개와다 내 미교 신이여와. 어디 가서 가와드는 다 저치말을 드는 자 가와드는 양들 내용. 왜내 용tun이도 다 용이지디 내 개와다 미교 이들의 손이지.
Then all will take again a new life in the future. And when they do, they will take along the virtues and non-virtues, the negative and positive karmas that they have accumulated. Those will be dragged along with those individuals when they head headlong into their next life.
Oh, yeah. Remember that suzu Zambuling is best. Juchala pura susu ina chicken care yaman. And is this Zambuling Senjan condition in this was when the Tobo Kariba in the Tisa Yomaras. And it's Susugutan, Mizic Yamdu Dede Josu, Chisho, Nye, Subu, Nye, Man, Sabi, Kadartape, Subuzachi, which yet, you need all Kisa Yomares.
Now, for all the things in the world, none of these things can be taken along in the way that negative and positive karma is taken along. No companion, no family will accompany anybody in their headlong fall into a future life. None of that is taken along. And though we hold very dear our body, our physical form, that too will not be taken along.
Oh yeah, that in the Indus and Madame care you but the any that part Susu did it said in a chimal kitua you but the Karelana, that I did lake or the Miguel that time. Oh yeah, that lake or the Miguel Nidigi, and it's a chimal coinam don't let Karachigas and let Miguel Digi, and Yamana Miasona Kijugre, Yamana Dendula Kijugre. That Miasona Keva in Yavala Keva in Sabe to me, Tama to make question Yondan Pet, Sadan to make Modo Shindaki good Tabi some of the time of Tabi Omare. And Idala Keva in and the Seju Tuan, Saya, the Tuya Mara, Sende Mado, Shedak some time, Kokori Omares. Tundula Keva in and Susu to make better Zoyam and big Kuchu, send Mission, send Jason on or Drogoya. And it's Susu best. Semji Tadiji by that lens to move to him. Chu near the party point is a chip giant Kugumare, and it's Suzu domain you all a target never did to my yoris. Only as only can do the rest. That they do like Keva Inayam, Mila Kenani, and then Omumata and Joe, Sheba Ribatamba Majo, and it gave a Nazi domain. And then Hama in the Keva and then how to do domain yoris. And then Hala Keva in and Church Yomare, and cheaper to make them Halapra doing on the minute to make chair. Or that quality case on that, they devote again to name of the Java and Dama tree my response.
Then what is carried along from this life to the next? In our next life, what will have arrived with us? Nothing but virtues and non-virtues accumulated in the past. And if that preponderance of non-virtue causes us to take a rebirth in the lower realms, and if that rebirth is in a hell realm, then all-consuming will be the experience of extreme heat and cold there, and there will be no room for any other thoughts at all. So intense and constant is the extreme heat or the extreme cold. Or if we are born in the realm of the Preta, we will be all consumed by thoughts of finding the food that we cannot find, and the quenching the thirst that we cannot quench, and there's no space for any other thought. Born in the animal realm, we are born then stupid, and then on top of that, yoked and may be subburdened by others, and that state is constant, and it is impossible that we hear the Dharma, all the more impossible that an animal could understand, comprehend its import, and there's no escape from that. Now, if on the other hand, an individual takes a rebirth in a fortunate realm, one may take a rebirth as a human being, but a human being without possession of one's full faculties, an unintelligent human being, that is possible. And should one be born a god, then even in the god realms, there is infighting and hostility. And then even for the gods too, there is transmigration, and the moment preceding transmigration, which is for them a horrendously painful moment. So then in these future moments It is only virtue and non-virtue that arrives with that individual at that moment.
못이지. 다 제단다 나서 내 이거 되는 수는 내가 못 믿어. 다 나서 내 개와죠. 다내 개와디 다 나서 패야 다내 개와 친주만도 매는 나서 내와 친주만도 제 두고 말. 아니 내 개와디 딩즈는 내와 딩즈들 아니 안베 디고나신 개와디 친구 별랑제나시는 제만 되고 대화대 친구 제기로 와서
So it is with the power or the strength of karma in this way. Now, if one has a bit of karma, then that bit of good karma, that bit of virtuous karma can bestow just a bit of satisfaction, or if one has accumulated a bit more than just a little favorable virtuous karma, then that will bestow upon one a bit more contentment and satisfaction. And then if one has accumulated considerable virtue, then one will then be bestowed with elephant-like considerable amount of contentment and satisfaction.
어떠지? 다 근데 이두자마다 먼저 가르치고 그래서 다 다다께서 시야 깨져 다다 디가는 내버려서 다 가르치고서 다 뒷바스 때문에 또 친구들이 뒷바디 좀 모르 매로 소고 열에서 어다 뒤텐다는 측디다 준주고 측디 뒷바도 이제 신도 메세바 아니 되는 조베스 장주 셈인데 계신 기자 세지네 내버 요새다 측디 다다 내고 열에서
Then that leaves us with, at the moment where we have to consider what do we do in this circumstance? What are we to do? That's where we are left now. And the sixth verse of the Bodhisattva Charya Avatara is dealing with just that. Evil is of great and overwhelming strength. Except for perfect bodhicitta, what other virtue is there that can lay it low? So this verse deals with or explains to us what then is to be done when this great preponderance of non-virtue determines seemingly all that will come.
어떠지? 세상다 먼저 대바 전부들 장관은 망고 여봐. 이베 친구 여봐. 아니 내가 여봐 나신 딱 고바 갑대되다 친구지 고고 여러 와서 배는 수증이 자디 숙친구 또 친구잖아. 파증에 수 또 친구 고러 와. 어디 고고 여봐 나신 다 먼저 파 갑대자 투에를 수자 투그를 해서나 아니 갑대자 투니에 아니 장주고 선생이 어디 자고 해서 그렇지.
So when the contestant is non-virtue and non-virtue is so powerful, and we are confronted with that non-virtue, it must, if it is to be vanquished, if it is to be deposed, then it must be met by an equal. So if we are in a confrontation with an adversary, a warrior equal to that adversary, a match equal to that adversary is required, and that equal is bodhicitta.
그치. 당연히 권리지 되는지라고 했다. 디봇도 없이했다. 디봇도 없이 뭐서 디봇도 없이 되는 거 무슨 미 잡진이는 미 잡진 디레스 우스고 와. 디나신 디봇도 없이 술에 디봇도 없이 가듯이 열에서 나바이 나스. 아니 디봇도 없이 생각을 당고 가듯이 레그레스는 디봇도 없이 뭐디 다 다니는 지단 다시 잡살다. 나 그 비디오 다 모두 그나 유 로아 유 디봇도 없이 제부 동네 메시지도 없이 뭐니 열어와 세 디고 맞추면 되나 유 디봇도 제부도 열어서 어디서 되지
juk de la caresung ko
그래서
that juk de la caresung ba yin
아네 유 어디 뭐 디봇 주면 디봇 열어와 디봇이 라 유기 디봇이다 유 안 제부 동네 디봇 열어와 유 dobjin semi tuwa dibo horache 제부 디고디 제부 dobjin 동해 semi tuwa 열어와 어디인지 다 매번 써요 어디인지 해서
Now I think I'll actually have to clarify again from the beginning what is meant here. When we say that there is an all-powerful, very strong adversary, this is the the negative actions or the non-virtues that have been accumulated in one's continuum. And that is the dangerous and the awesome adversary here. And that adversary has the negativity that is the negativity of the cause that will bring about negativity that is the suffering as its result. And both of these are awesome and unbearable, and both of these are the adversary.
Oh yeah, that's big what of Jen. You big what of somebody that call yours. And exure, call yours, that's to put to race. And to go call to some of them, people call you Susan, some time.
Okay, so this formidable cause, this all-powerful cause, this adversary, where is it, or who is it, or what is it? Is there any pointing to this? Is there any finding this in oneself? I'm asking you.
Oh yeah, that's because of Chandy, because of Chambu Sudizama. That bed Chanju send me cut the job or say, but there are the that's good to part away your maras, to mill but away your maras. That's good to soon. Nah, start now, since do. Oh, that to shoot it. Da, na you, ma, sing. Na, da, well, not da to Zimbata, Nanzing Saint Oh, yeah, that is Nanzing said, around the taking around some Mamasho, some Mamu Konsho. But Nimata, some Koji, Machi teaching, my teaching, Machi Timas, Mata Dixon, my kiwu to say, oh, the data need be Madita, because amateur lessons.
There's this adversary, then this all-powerful forbidding adversary, and it will be opposed by its equal in bodhicitta. Well, but where is that adversary? What is that adversary? What do we point to when we identify that adversary? We don't point outwards. We point at ourselves. We point to the activity of self-identification. Saying again and again, I, me, myself, I, me, myself, I, me, myself. And that activity is endless and continues day in and day out. I need, I want, I got, I didn't got, I didn't get, I'm satisfied, I'm dissatisfied, I'm happy, I'm unhappy. This is the very cause.
Oh yeah, that humble mass and nala godu. The nere, the ma, some of the shuchimu, some of the gig to us. Oh, dig it, that in a ma said, yes, like that, yes, Tamu Mas Labzarwa, and Mas Labzin, you were like, yes, and somebody not choose later. And she was a little somebody, some to put to controls. Or the Congress has a utilized arrest. 나, 예, 맞춰서도 되자게 되어와 되자게 때 맞춰지지 봐 맞지 되자게 다 다뤄질 때에서 맞으면 미직 남도 원다 지금 맞고 삼도 대방 맞고 지금 건조 사서 유지를 잘해서
Then this activity of self-identification continues. I, me, mine, I need, this is mine. It begins first with identifying the self and saying I, and then it's followed thereafter by possessive, mine, and then a collective possessive, our, and then finally in the end, there, but it's only there as an identification of who is responsible for our not getting our satisfactions. And it's the third, identifying what is ours, that creates a shared attachment. And then when somehow someone grows dissatisfied, there is then a there to identify as the cause of our dissatisfaction.
Oh yeah, that 되자 뭐 다보숨 되게 되자 게 시트주체 아니 그냥 콘조스도 콘도 게 뒤주들에 사서 아 그냥 갈래제는 밀랑하게 제가 타도 제가 아니 미 가정어디 스톱치아도 야가세도 마가지 차도지로 아니 콜라디 카데자지도 마게란으로 아니 근데 직직 마디 ben남도 대선되게는 이모가가 깨살을 때 유튜브 신부들가 될래 살에
So these first three activities, self-identification, I, and then collective, or rather possessive mind, followed by a collective possessive our, are three foundations for attachment, three bases that give rise to our attachment. And then the fourth, collective other, there becomes the basis for an anger, for anger. And then we have a whole onslaught of the rest of the mental afflictions, pride and jealousy and the rest, when that other group is perhaps identified as stronger or better, and then we grow competitive, or we grow proud, or we grow uncertain and doubtful. Following these is an onslaught of all the rest of the mental afflictions.
예, 진짜 당분간 네, 맞으시듯 되자지기도 전부 샘지 시회 넘버 sense 샘지 시회 넘버 가서 미시가 잠무시나 개무전에 니가 잠무시나 콜레도 좀 미가가 아파 상고를 거지도 들려도 어디 나시고 되자도 시회 넘버 한번내고 타고 말때 시장 보여 따스한 때 차네 되자 좀때 차네 발지기는 저는 미국도 사오시려고 그러고요. 오늘 그 건조스가 되잖아. 그거는 믿으면서 저번에 뭐지 내 살다. 저번에 뭐지 나 안명한테 뭐 그다음 비야. 그 저번에 그 두제치도 나기도 나지 코스도 되잖아. 쌤 저번 그거지 믿두젠데 나지. 어디에 실내 쌤 주변 넘버라서. 주변 넘버지 그렇잖아. 다들 콘도레사도 안에 가르쳐 다시는 여봐게야. 콘도들아 담보 콘도사도 콘도 담보들 가래. 그런데로 토하러 토하러 나도 토하되기 아니 군지지 아니 시간 받려봐야 갑자기 자기도 토하되지라 군지도 되게 아니 되게 경우에는 이모 강하기에다 디버사이 강에 동에 영향이 쭉 강가 다그 상사를 송하지.
These three first activities, self-identification, I, possessive identification, mine, collective possessive, our, is a basis for the aspect of peaceable contentment. We imagine that a person is peaceable and contented when they have these things satisfied, when they have their self-identification and their possessiveness and their collective possessiveness all gratified. And then we would think of such a person, we find such a person to be peaceable and content. And there is peaceableness and contentment. But then when there's some disruption to that, not all of that is satisfied, all of those three activities are satisfied, then we encounter the aspect of dissatisfaction or the aspect of anger. When one of those is not satisfied, this new aspect, the aspect of anger, becomes clear and vivid. And then the first form of anger or hostility is spite, which gives rise to a resentment. And then following this come causes for all the other sorts of non-virtuous activities.
딱 건조 니모 되게 딱 가르치기로 했으나 건조기 딱 되자되게 아니 차바게 돼 잘라도 앞에 강바 야가지 그냥 알고 뭐를 야가는 사제 야가는 알고 찍찍 빙 통제가 다들 알아서 난 알고 차바게 와서 어디 되게 아니 이거 막 찍사를 그 차배 원기 아니 단데 때내 망고지 사기로 와서 다디나지 콘로게 아니 왜 밀어 마가 저 콘로스 내가 게 칸에 두자라 그래 누기 남주고 돈에 밀어 쉬고래 내가 지그래 아니 배는 다 밀어 미세야가 수수랑지 야야가 아니 배 내가 가르치 제가 있네 콘로 쓰는데 마기는 밀어 내가 그래 게 말아 콘로도 뭘 그러 되게 된 내사 그래서 내 사는 가르치 그래서 내디 사는 샤선 더 샤서 먼저 쌤 때는 샤와서 바자데 쌤데 먼저 만두고 쌤데 루브디 먼저 강바쳐들어 쌤데 강변난 잘라서 차더라고서 그마다 샘이 강보 쳐들어와 대리나는 박자디 나로 잘라도 그러나 고덤 친구주나 고덤되나 잘라 먹고 셔들어와 디나신 것도 샘이 되나 아니 배 이모도 좀 박자 딱 양샤가 내 되고 어디를 지그래서
then the onslaught of mental afflictions begins with attachment, desirous attachment. We begin to feel for things like a car. We want a car. We want some kind of land. We want land for ourselves. We want a house. We want all these things, and so there's desirous attachment in us, and that desirous attachment motivates actions, and and when they're frustrated, then hostility. We grow hostile, angry and hostile, and we are willing to harm others, hit others, speak disparagingly of others, murder others, or commit suicide. Whatever form the harm takes, it follows from some form of hostility, following from some preceding attachment, desirous attachment. And so actions are motivated in this way, or come about under these influences. And when the action is committed, the action has been done, its latency or its karmic residuality finds its home, so to speak, in the mind. The mind is capacious for storing all of these latencies.
뜻이 나도 발품으로 직시 시에나 답은 다졌던 걸 다졌던 거 그런 언제는 계획보고로 와 계획보고를 해야 낭미당 배 바다 파마 강가로 배 계획해야 배 답시 막 진배 계획 그런 모든 계획이 있으면 됐어 답시 막 제거로 와 이내 좀 되게 그런 게 아니 낭미강가 김에 요 보고 요 계획 계획보다 유면 그런 걸 와. 제가 오늘 제가 다 미직 삼로 땅이나 단 거기에 유에디 아니 거가래 오늘 미 장고래 그거를 스케줄 해서나 땅 앞으로 지나다 아우다 또 이제 예부터 예시들이 유는 가능한데 잘라 강고 지지는 그걸 당초 말와 제가 고랑이 딱 가르치면서 했으나 고랑이 당고 유고야 그 삼로 커야 돼 고랑이 깨가 나지고 동네 통와 깨가 나지고 동네 통도 아니 고랑이 삼로 땅에 깨가 나지고 동네 돼 단다 당고 통선을 미심바 파트미단 통화 이나디 수수 양구요와 소화는 수수 소화는 줄레와 그래서 많은 마다를 배들이 계시진 대바이나 아니 마음을 깨가 나지고 동네 다르게 말 땅을 깨가 나지고 동네 타려야 지금 땅에 계시대 김에다 끼고 보고도 말려다는 말은 타면 삼로 타진 아니 고랑도 그 자산을 땅으로 왔어 자산을 땅은 자마산게 고와토 아니 수수 파마다 강가로 가고 지도와 종으로 왔어 재산 따지들 마땅하 있나 아니 이모들이 그냥 거기 깨진 깨가 나지 그러면 아주 거기 깨오러 와 재산 니지를 모두 디나신 땅 하나도 니 좀내리 오마 상기도 아무 남을 가지고 구수 수부지로 와 디다 단단 말아도 수부지 캐버지가 요 말했어 수 가랑도 저 땅 투마도 제 투마도 깨져를 나도 르딘 더 캐봐요 말했어 일단 말하면서 간다 삼도 타천 제와이나 아니 지도야 차지가 좀 여러 손지 아무 상관 없어
Now, if you were to allow me to illustrate this with a story, there's the perfect illustration in the life of the Buddha Shakyamuni, who was born a prince in a kingdom, and when he was an adolescent, the king and the queen did all that they could to fascinate him by the kingdom and all that was to be had in the kingdom and all that he would inherit. But then when he abandoned it all, when he abandoned the kingdom and the wife that he had taken and all the riches that go along with kingship, anybody will think will wonder, well, is his having abandoned all of that the action of a fool or a wise person? And think about it in personal terms. Compared to a prince with a kingdom to inherit, we have a modest home maybe, and we are incapable of abandoning even that modest home that we have. But what happened for the Buddha Shakyamuni was he was able to look out into the experience of others and see that all others were experiencing birth, aging, and death, and that he, regardless of whether, or rather, he, even as prince with a kingdom and a wife, would necessarily experience all of that. And without ever abandoning that, there would be no hope for him to ever escape the bondage of samsara. He did deliberately abandon the kingdom, his queen, and all the riches that went with his kingdom, and then he attained Buddhahood. And so he did not all over again take rebirth. Instead, he attained the state of Buddhahood. Now, his physical embodiment is no different from ours. At the level of what he was endowed with before his Buddhahood, Shakyamuni and we are identical. Whether or not we do achieve this sort of liberation depends only on us. There's no difference in the conditions, the original conditions that were the Buddha's and those that are ours. And again, it is the very same story with the illustrious Shantideva, the author of this Shastra. He was born a prince, but he abandoned the kingdom and he became ordained, and then he composed the present Shastra. Now we, if we practice, may well attain Buddhahood just as they have, if we practice just as they did. And we too are capable of eliminating all dissatisfactions and all suffering. In fact, the conditions for doing so, supportive conditions for doing just that, are present more than they were even for these individuals in the past.
Oh yeah, that also the bata susugi under chu majeba ina and page the tanda nashi deva ina that you nyumu digi that jebu dunge and also that zoya never nyangwa yimba rest that jebu dunge miseba tanda bottom of the type karicheres you be body that modu chesarwa. Oh, that jebu dunge miseba said. 아주 냐와 있잖아. 아니 차단 동에 그냥 아주 드려요. 배샤이나. 아주 미지 권나기요나. 미 때나 니마직 나기요나. 미 사람아주 수미 베터라. 권나서 니마직 나고요나. 미 아니 되려 때나 다와직 나게 하서. 미 이달 때나 나는 로가 주나게 하서. 다디 예와 때문에 나는 그 롱아 게스트들 하고 먼저 가서는 미들이 미기 롱아 줄라 녀가 이마치 하고 세세저와 사다 하기 세세비다 녀가 세세기 눈 저어줘요 미기 롱아 줄라 녀가 이마치 세상 아주 이마치 밀 때는 이마치 나고요나 녀와 롱아 줄다면 나고 세상에 되게 유를 뭐 나다 찍이나야 대가지 개가 열어서
Then with with the present non-virtues we have accumulated, and if we do not practice the Dharma, then there will be a continuation of the accumulation of the causes for suffering, the mental afflictions, and then the result of these negativities, endless suffering, will be the result. And so here ends then the brief description of the non-virtue that is the cause, okay? Now we move on to the non-virtue in its form of the result, which is the awesome and endless suffering that comes from non-virtue. Now think of a human being with a headache. A human being will have a headache for one day. So the basis for the suffering of the headache is the human form, and it lasts one day. With a basis of a animal form, an animal embodiment, one day's human headache will be 1 month of animal headache. And that 1 month of animal headache, when the basis is the form of the preta, will be 50 years of a preta's headache. And then in the hell realm, that 50 years of a preta headache will be 500 years of the hell being's headache. Now, in this way, there's a way. It is that the basis of a hell being, the physical basis of a hell being, and the physical basis of a God is similar, such that the suffering or the satisfaction in terms of its duration is similar.
나 제가 로종 냠내칭의 자주 선바주 여러와 일단 로종 냠내칭의 자주 선바주 웬만한 가르쳐졌으나 아니 나 수수그 사베 렉 디바 사베 제부 양국의 유나 내 밀루디 때는 나와쇼 차와쇼 뭐는 제그레스 로종 냠내 로종 좀 드나들어다 로종이 동해가 람나 자르다니 되어서야 제가 뒤에서 뭐 또는 게르서 뭐 나와쇼 차와쇼 아니 얘기 내 버리 싸우는 내디 땡디를 미버쇼스 뭐는 디제그와 나서이나 마나와쇼 마자와쇼 뭐는 제고 이나 먼저 뭐는 디다 지단 취주래 아니 디가는 뭐라도 생겨 말았어 로존 연례 중에 전주서 뭐 나와쇼 차와쇼 땡디도라 배 동해가 미 땡디를 양토쇼 뭐는 제고 그래서
Now, for bodhisattvas in training, the bodhisattvas training and making aspirational prayers, the way in which they make aspirational prayers is to see to it that negativities accumulated in their past ripen upon them during this present life on this very basis that they have. That is, they say in their mind training, may my negativities all ripen upon me right now. May all illness and pain ripen upon this very basis now. This is the aspirational prayer of the Bodhisattva in their training. And it's different from ours, which is, oh, I hope that I don't get sick. Oh, I hope that I don't experience any pain at all. And we make that misguided aspirational prayer in our ignorance, but the bodhisattvas in their wisdom wish for all negativity to ripen upon their very basis just then.
어떻게 되는 뭐는 겨고 균제매만 말해 균제 친구야 균제 찍을 다시 공을 쉬는 바 먼저 배난 샘쟁이 들을 때는 내송 때는 냐와 있나 규름부 냥거래 아니 다시 찍어야 요 말해 저그 요었다 다시 가야 요 말. 미때는 냐와 동네도 미때는 냐와 있나 뒤뒤뒤봐도 냐고 말해 아니 단도 콜로 요었다요 타고 저도 체열했어 제가 유제 친구였다 내가 로종 신얘기 나는 따라서 지구를 해서
Now, it might seem that there's no reason for such an extraordinary aspirational prayer for these bodhisattvas, but it is a incredibly significant reason that they make it in this way. And it is because, just as I have said, when you compare the experience of suffering had by an animal and compare it to the experience had on the basis of a hell being, the hell being will experience greater duration of that same negative ripening. And as a hell being, during that experience of suffering, The duration is longer, and furthermore, the held being has absolutely no means for changing the course of events at all, as I have said. Now, the basis of a human embodiment is different. As I said, the duration of the experience is shorter, and furthermore, it is changeable.
도시 다 단다도도 쉬면 다 제부 동네에서 다 제부 동네 메세 봐서 근데 디버톱진 세 메세 세야겠다 유톱진다 제부톱진 니노 제부톱진다 para 그저 동네는 차샤위는 그저 동네 맞고 미 통하요 암조 가요 여러와 다 이다 동네는 예외 동네도 맞고 삼로당 수수 리버 롱 산제기 롱다 아니 녀에게 돈을 맞고 미 통하요 암조 가요 말와 어디들 딱 미기 동네다보다 아니 즉 밖에 그저 동네도 나라도 미기 통하요 암조 가요 저거 그 동네 참모들이 여러 제가 내리 아니 동네들도 삼로당진 아니 수수비 동네들하고 용 먹어야 탑시에 가르쳐 때 수수 랭게를 해서
Now here we have described then the formidability of the cause, non-virtue, and the formidability or the formidableness of the result, the inexhaustible suffering one experiences. The great power, the great strength of those two, the cause and the inexhaustible results. Now we look out into the world of animal life, and we can see it's immediately evident to us just how it is they're suffering. But when we think of the suffering in the realm of the preta and of hell beings, we don't have any direct experience of it. We have to reason about it, we have to reflect on it, and we have to refer to the authority of the scriptures. In the case of human beings and their suffering, we've experienced every bit of it. We've seen it. It's evident to us. Now, when we think to ourselves, what method, what means do I have to prevent my future experience of the suffering that is the consequence of non-virtues? The responsibility for that rests in us and us alone.
한다다 유니모디게 그게 왕기 아니 가르쳐서 하나도 믿어 있는 딱 믿어 생길 수 있는 루마 예수 지원에 딱 리버사이 고들라 아니 루이다 마다 예수 여러 아니 다 루이지 보네 아니 가르치거스나 소저바 마지막에는 미담을 줘 지형으로 다 나지 보네 아니 준 참아 지중 아제시 지형으로 아니 이지 보네 나선 로다 어다 누가 예수 니모디 꾸니라는 아니 누가 예수 제베를 토하는 리버스 사를 해서
Now, when we consider the cause of inexhaustible suffering, it is the mental afflictions, and when we consider the basis for engagement in negative activities, whether those are the activities of human beings or of animals, the activity will be verbal, or rather, it will be physical, verbal, and mental. And the physical path of non-virtue is to murder, to steal, to engage in sexual misconduct. The verbal non-virtues are to lie, to speak harsh words, to divide through speech and to slander. And the mental non-virtues are covetousness, maliciousness, and wrong views.
다 이게 드린디 뭐도 주주 측들만 들만 들면 가르스는 땅아도 상이 미까지 그 제를 물어와 야 거는 지시 잡대 있어서 일단 드린간도 직박에 계산시에 사교 나가 디보다 개와성들 모두로 제외 인생 드린간도 내가 대신 저와 있는 나라나 그만 없는 되죠.
Now today we didn't cover many verses, and that's because so few people could come, and when they come next week, then we'd have to cover the same material again. So in this space of opportunity, we've provided an introduction into virtue and non-virtue, and now we can make some time for questions. And if there are no questions, then we can do our closing prayers.
If beings in Hell realm, Preta realm, or animal realm have no opportunity to accumulate virtue, how do they become reborn in the human realm?
Nyawapa dan yida dan dundro denzo kewadi limbe nekabla ani gewa saya gi koka mena ani mi lu rimboche gandes kewadi gandes lento gire
제가 가서 뒤봐 맞아 덴도네 덴도를 킹에디 리치무드 사치모만 로나 제레스 맞아 덴도를 킹에디 좀 되도 사 세모도 살려면 장가돼야 이래서 제가 먼저 단다 달래 먼저 밀을 먼저 단다 밀을 이겨 줘와 이 간대를 먼저 농부치를 수수 농부들 줄이를 도와 공세도 와 공세도 하나 달래 가서 공세를 되더라 덴도는 공세를 되더라 먼저 그 농부원에 바래 년도를 찾아가서 일단 먼저 딱 다른 주들들 수수 야구 마시는 남자야 내 손만 깨르고 와 어디 나시래서 제가 코 덴도를 깨야지 장가 잡혀야 돼 유유로 하다 덴도를 깨야지 장가 맡아야 그 두세 대단 먼저 빼는 미 나도 먼저 전부되는 미 가서 장가 가서 그냥 니네 나 기억 많아 선지신다도 여러와 돈을 망아 일하는 녀요 어디 장가 괜찮네 아니 먼저 미리 유유부터 소화나 칸 시를 많이 선배는 소화를 되게 거래서
Yes, it's as you say, the numbers of sentient beings who are going to tumble again from fortunate rebirths back into really their native lands of the unfortunate realms, the number of sentient beings falling always down is infinite. Whereas those that are making the ever brightening progression upwards are, as the Buddha said, as few as the grains pinched between my fingertips when he lifted a pinch of earth. They're countable, but uncountable are the numbers falling from the momentary vacation of being in a fortunate rebirth, which is just a brief respite, just a vacation, like a vacation. Countless are those who are falling back into their lower realms. And that's really what it is. It's like a respite or a brief vacation that we have, where we work, where what is our homeland is the lower realms. And so it really is that way, that few are those who are climbing upwards, many are those who are falling downwards. And whatever the population is on Earth, there are that many people, but there are countless more animals and other forms of life. And then there are many, many more pretas, and then many times more hell beings. And so in a feeling of the reality of that is something that you've got to inculcate in yourself.
별 남아지 숨지나는 이 텐조 빼니에 가고를 텐조 빼 공부를 다시 잡으러 아니 그런 그 야나는 요지에서 남아지 야나는 그런 요지에서 말해 먼저 미 가지고 야나는 예스 어디 나오나 이제 먼저 봤더니 장가게 되다 뭐 망고를 줘라 이내 딜레 많아 밀리트 다 망고를 할 남아이 뭐 하마이 디망들 들으면 들을 이다 망고를 와서 그저 두 삼로 따나 아니 먼저 밀리트 깔래하고 이마데 대시 그 선배들은 내가 깔래하고 요래 손을
there's a story of a Tibetan teacher in Tibet who hadn't traveled abroad, and he had a student who was presumably from China, because when that teacher was teaching the difficulty of attaining a precious human embodiment, the student who traveled a bit said, objected and said, "Have you even been to China? There are so many people there." And the point, however, is that though there are many people, there may seem to be many people, but there are that many more devas. There are that many more preta. There are many, many, many times more hell beings. And so, though it's difficult to comprehend, try to comprehend just how rare the human embodiment is. 아니 니와 봐. 이 개와 레나. 다니 개와 간지사그래. 덴드로 아니 덴드로기 루텐 레니에기 개와 간지사그 잡투기래.
참 많이 드린 사람이 말을 가지나. 잠불린데 똥으로 와. 잠불린데 레고 똥들을 니와 똥에 두세요라고. 잠불린데 니와 똥에 두세요. 잠불린데 똥들을 니와 감도 똥으로 와. 딱 거기서 가시 삼대는 기계래. 가시 잠불린 신박이 니와 기계로 와. 찍지체. 찍기도 와. 찍으다 보면 배는 이딱 leg 그런 leg 뒤부터 세기로 와. 세니 양 니와 세편이야. 기와 leg 뭐만 또 그냥 그 레편 이 둘을 깨세기래. 아니 다 깨세기 딱 근데 둘을 때라야 안 상게 또 지나다. 아니 수수 참다마다 기와 중에 되게 또 그냥 그 가지다 유야 레비로 하다. 하우나 레그스 뭐만 레그 기와 집에 또 때네. 아니 뭐야 레 녀월 게 레드 좋아요. 그 좋아하면 좀 많다. 그 좋아하면 둘을 때는 기와 쓰기래. 양 밀에 기와 그 레고 바자리 옵니다. 그러면 매직이 레 몸직 쌓여나. 레 몸직네. 레 찍다 거기 기와 쌓여 용식으로 와. 대는 레 강막이 지구당 고동구주 고지지로 팀미교 있는 걸 내겨 직사원데 용으로 디왕이 양고 뭐야 끼어도 직사도 공부를 하다 몸지는 직르다 하나 어디든 꼬라게 끼어요 다 꼬르 간다 삼삼다 산지 지금도 준비 왕게 되는 끼어 세계를 삼삼 양 그런데 삼도 요와 땅다 왕이 요바들 직접 용시 왔다. 이내 เป็น유를 와. 어디를 열다. 예외 때는 자주 생겨 요. 저는 다자도 뭐 다자도 뭐 당주 삼 인지 좀 거기 있겠으나 예외 때는 있게.
Now, regarding how a hell being or a preta being would accumulate the virtue that would allow them and a fortunate rebirth, that's a big topic. It isn't that there is absolutely no end at all to the causes that will ripen into an endless experience of the lower realms. It is possible for there to be an eventual exhaustion of such karma and for a fortunate rebirth to occur, but it's exceedingly rare. I have to emphasize there are factors that contribute to that possibility, that minuscule possibility, such as the blessings of the Buddha when the Buddha is present and can give his blessings or her blessings. But out of 100,000 negativities accumulated by a hell being, it might be that 99,999 are non-virtuous moments, and there's one virtuous moment. It's exceedingly rare, but it does happen. It can eventually happen in the rare cases that an individual does achieve a fortunate rebirth, and this happens by the blessings of the Buddha. And the way that this is possible can be understood in that the the Buddha first generated great Mahakaruna, great compassion, as a hell being.
Kurang 이 지금 제거에 가서 깨서 kurang 로봇이 kurang이 신다 이어다 신다 테마로 한다고 그래요. 테마도 kurang 로봇이 하장이 교부친 테마도 되니 녀가 레지버기 kurang이 나던데 kurang이 콜 예범마다서 고참 예지기서 kurang 닝지 뒤왕이 아니 kurang 교화사네 아니 교화되기 때문에 kurang 녀가 레 동네 아니 살게 아니 가네
How it happened that the Buddha first generated Mahakaruna was he was a hell being with another hell being laboring to pull a chariot and unable to pull that chariot. The charioteer was abusing the Buddha's team member pulling at the chariot, and the Buddha, who would later be the Buddha, said, "Don't abuse him. Just lash me instead." And that was the Mahakaruna, the moment that then caused that being to be reborn as the Buddha that we know and whose story we're familiar with. Who was born in a heavenly realm afterwards. Any other questions?
I was reading the notes before. So with virtue being very numerous as opposed to virtue being comparably small, our only way to I would say, I guess off the top of my head, to loosely vanquish it or to topple it would be by bodhicitta, and of course that is one's loving kindness towards others, one's not only intent but in terms of creating opportunity for awareness and enlightenment for others, is and working on one's own sorry, that was very lost from right now. So bodhicitta meaning well, of course it's the bodhisattva path. Bodhicitta is loving kindness towards others. Of course, it starts with loving kindness towards others and oneself simultaneously. And how do we do that as people who are beginners in the path, those who are middling in the path, and those of us who are trying to approach the higher form of the path. I mean, those are three levels that simultaneously exist in this world and this material world, and they're all in interplay. It's not just the 6 realms, of course. It's not static. It's ever changing. It's ever in front of us. And how do we tackle that as householders, as people who are just entering the path, and those of us who are trying to approach closer to our, to the parts of our path that are, those of us who are in Mudro, but are approaching further along past our Mudro.
Also, die nicht schon wo ihr bitte. Rati Miguel top section bo yamba. Ani Miguel top chuma. Adi dene ani Miguel top section bo de. Jomi gi chedu ani jangchuk di sem ani make rangiere ra. Ani inayan de 아니 개부면 라와 아니 숨라고 요러 아니 개부 진보 중어 근데 요러 다 아니 아니 draw rectruk din yoro tat din 아니 yo che mambo yore ra din mambo yore 아니 lamla lobe 아니 nekap din yang yoro ta 아니 di draw kam da meba mandraw mambo yore 어데 다 제자니 이 감당 먹음 라면라니 요바 예나 다 장축 있음 케타 킬로 케당 니 라면라니 맨라와 샤야 요나
다들 장주선 다 지당 장주선 기업이 내진 찍으러 와 이날 장주선 계단 미저 열 계단 미저 열에서 장주선 계단 미저 열 아니 지당 그 장주선 계단 중앙주 배전하고 용다선 찍 열어 용다지 열어 다 이날 배 장주선 배는 온보랑 리타송가 빠베 장주선 이 숙칠을 열에 계단 미저 용을 아니 대마도 다시 주고 찍을 가지 망보고 그러는데 용을 와 이제 가면 뭐 용을 해서 대신 아니 이제 뭐 도와 리투 스두선마 도와 리투게 때문에 저주선 게 요래서 도와 리투게 또 무슨 게 요래서 예 딱이네 태고에 뭐 숨생이 와 디한테스입니다 태고에 뭐 숨생이 고 삼로 장난 가라 팀내도 저주선 장난 말아 고야 저주선 데려다 그 개개로 와 팀내도 저주선 장난 말아 기부 숨스도 기부 드린다 중국의 정주성장은 뭐라 정주성장이 기부 친구였다. 딱 이내 하나마도 가르치고 그래서 딱 뒷과 또 친구 뒷에 세번 쳐서 정주성장이나 아니 이것도 이제 내일 하고 좀 정토를 해서 이것도 좀 또 둔데오지는 깔리티를 야모도 정토해줘라. 어디 있게 저 시리가 해서 전다 숨쉬 차서 어디 되게 어느 시
네, 왔다 bodhicitta, within all that diversity of individuals generating bodhicitta is everywhere the same bodhicitta, but there are many different ways, a variety of ways to generate that bodhicitta. So the bodhicitta is the same, but there are various ways of generating bodhicitta. Now in the texts, one and all alike present bodhicitta and the means for generating bodhicitta in univocally or one way, but according to distinctions drawn in terms of intelligence, for one, the method for generating bodhicitta for the most intelligent, for those of middling intelligence, for those of inferior intelligence. And with those various means of generating bodhicitta, there's a difference in the intensity of the bodhicitta as it's being generated, and in the efficacy during its generation or during using that method, the efficacy and the intensity and the time it takes too. So that's just regarding those beings of different capacity. But know that all beings, know that all of the six realms of beings are a basis for the generation of bodhicitta, all of them, all six transmigrating realms. Now, when it comes to the three vehicles, here there is some significant divergence when it comes to bodhicitta. Within the foundation vehicle or the Shravakayana, bodhicitta is not a topic. There's no training in bodhicitta per se. Bodhicitta is a training for beings of the greatest capacity. It is not the explicit training. It is not the training of the individuals of the lower two capacities. Now, in our confrontation with non-virtue, which is such a formidable opponent now, so formidable for us, we've pointed out or identified bodhicitta as the most effective means for confronting that adversary, for eliminating it, for meeting it as an equal. And bodhicitta may do that easily, effortlessly. Bodhicitta has such significant power that it can confront that non-virtue. Okay, so now time we've it's past the time, and we'll do our first. From my two collections, vast in space, that I've amassed from working with effort for this practice for a great length of time, may I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose minds, wisdom eyes, blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all my life's wonders. May I find the best of the paths of the complete teachings, and may I please all the Buddhas by practicing. Using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings with the points of the path as I have discerned them. May I uphold the Buddha's teachings for a very long time, with my heart going out with great compassion, in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread or once spread have declined. May I offer this treasure of happiness to aid all sentient beings. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted bounteous peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time by following the complete graduated path to enlightenment and the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their sons. May all human and non-human beings that eliminate adversity and make things conducive for practicing the excellent paths never be parted in any of their lives from the purest paths praised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes an effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtuous practices, may he always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere.
Dagi Gewe Zawo Digun Yang Zambo Jeje Rabu Moa Ji Chanju Senjo Rimbo Maje Wana Je Yoji Jewa Nyamba Neba Gone Gondo Bewa Sho.
I dedicate whatever virtues I have ever collected for the benefit of the teachings and of sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. In the land encircled by snowy mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good, all powerful Tenzin Gyatso. Please remain until cyclic existence is ended. Just as the brave Manjushri and Samantabhadra too realize things as they are, also I dedicate all these merits in the best way, that I may follow their perfect example. I dedicate all these roots of virtue with the dedication praised as the best by the victorious Dasgan ones of the three times, so that I might perform the noble Bodhisattva's deeds. May the supreme jewel Bodhicitta that has not arisen, arise and grow. And may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, that was all about non-virtue.